Welcome to DUO Security, Remote Access VPN with multi-factor authentication and ISE posture workflow. My name is Sandeep Yadav. In this video tutorial, I'm going to cover AnyConnect, DUO, and ISE, how to use these three components together to perform MFA and posture validation for remote access users. I intend to cover two workflows in this video tutorial and cover demo for each of these workflow in subsequent video tutorials. So let me just introduce the two workflows here. So the first workflow here is as follows. We have got a user who on whose laptop AnyConnect roaming client or AnyConnect security client, secure mobility client is already installed, right? Is the same user who is already an enrolled user in Duo. So he has Duo mobile app installed on his mobile. This user now tries to connect to the VPN gateway and is prompted for username and passcode. The VPN gateway here in this example in my demos is going to be ASA or Firepower Threat Defense. The VPN gateways are configured further with a RADUIS authentication server, which happens to be in this case as DUO Authentication Proxy. I have installed this DUO Authentication Proxy on one of the server. DUO Authentication Proxy in turn is configured with primary authentication servers as a AD client in the configurations and uses AD as a primary authentication source. Once the username and passwords are verified, DUO Auth Proxy sends the request to the Duo cloud. For this request to be successful, you need to allow outbound access for the source as authentication proxy towards Duo Cloud on TCP 443. It's an outbound request. When the request reaches Duo Cloud for policy evaluation, based on the policy, the Duo Cloud sends a push notification to the user. The user has to accept the push notification received on his mobile. Once it's accepted, the access accept message is returned by auth proxy back to the VPN gateway, which is step 6 here. And this is where we do small tweaking and changes. So same firewall is now configured with another RADUIS server or RADUIS authentication server, which happens to be Cisco Identity Services Engine. Cisco Identity Services Engine in terms points to AD as a authentication source, okay, and it's the same username password which is forwarded to ISE. ISE checks the availability of the same user existence in the AD, and after that ISE performs the posture validation. So there are three authorization rules defined for unknown posture, non-compliant posture, and a compliant posture. Okay, and as part of this, the catch is I'll show you in the configuration. I have two separate AAA server defined on this same firepower threat defense devices. And for authentication, I'm using DUO Auth Proxy, but for authorization, I'm using Identity Services Engine, and that makes me reach the end goal or achieve the end goal of posturing the incoming user right here. Okay, once the posture is successful, the user is marked as compliant. The user is able to successfully connect back. So this is flow 1, which I would be demonstrating. Before that, before going to flow 2, let me just show you the configuration for this workflow and how does this work. So very first, let me just show you where is my fire FTD. So I'm using FMC, and if I show you my devices and I go to remote access VPN, I have already a VPN configured here. If I go inside, here is my connection profile as I had explained you. And if you look at here, I have my authentication source, which is DUO. And for authorization and accounting, I'm using Identity Services Engine. Where are these defined? These are defined here. So I have defined two RADUIS server group. The first one happens to be DUO. Okay. Here is the IP defined 10.20.60.10, which for me happens to be right here. So this server happens to be 10.20.60.10 for me. This is the server where I have DUO Auth Proxy Service running, and as part of the configurations, I have kept marked the S keys as hidden. But as you can see here, this configuration specifically where I am pointing, or I have configured FTD address. So 10.20.61 is the management interface IP of FTD, and that's the shared secret. As I explained in the workflow, DUO Auth Proxy is pointing to AD as a primary authentication source, which I have defined in a separate component right here. So this is where my primary authentication source is defined, which is AD, and my details are defined over here, basis of DN and the group to search. Okay, so this is where the configuration exists. We'll be coming back, we'll come back and we'll look at the logs here once the authentication, once we test out the authentication. So going back to the configuration, so this is the first one, which is DUO Auth Proxy. Second, what I've done is I've configured ISE RADUIS server. So 10.20.60.8, and if I do ns lookup ISE dot, that's my ISE server. You see it's 10.20.68, so the 10.20.68 is my ISE server, what I'm pointing here. As I explained, the catch is you need to say enable authorize only. Make sure you turn on interim accounting updates and dynamic authorization, or COA, because the user profile will move from unknown to probably non-compliant or compliant, right? So you need COH. So that's my second server right here. So two servers configured, which are called in this order. Authentication is DUO, but for authorization I'm relying on ISE. And then let me just show you what I have configured in ISE. So I just jump to my policy set. As I mentioned, as I mentioned, it's configured. The firewall is configured as to point towards ISE as a RADUIS server. So firewall is configured first of all as a RADUIS client here on ISE. And then what I have done is I've configured a policy set for FTD, which is done here. In this, I am regularly pointing to my AD server. So let's get inside this policy set. My authentication policy still points to my internal AD server. And once this is successful, I expect the profiles to hit one of these. To start with, posture unknown, and I expect this profile, authorization profile, to be given. So authorization pre-posture VPN Duo, that's my authorization profile, and let me just show you what is there in that pre-posture VPN Duo authorization profile. It's taking a while. So it's right here. I have access accept message to go. There is a ACL web auth redirect and the portal. And I've done one more thing. This is specifically done for DTO compliance here in India, where as part of Directorate of Telecommunication Compliance letter, it's important that all the teleworkers who are working from home, every time they connect to the VPN gateway, they should be allocated, or the same user should be allocated the same IP every time, and they have to submit the user, the IP, and the work location details to the DoT. So we have defined. So I have defined this attribute called MS radius framed attribute in AD server for all these users. So every time they connect, they always get that static IP defined in the AD server, and that value is passed as framed IP address as part of the radius result or radius response packet. So having said this, let's get back to the testing phase. So we come back here. Here is one of my user. He is not on VPN. Sorry. So let's get started. I'm going to say connect. Eric is the user here. I am entering the primary password for primary authentication. Endpoint site. So we connect. We give the primary login. And this goes. The user is connected. You see the posturing is happening. We are connected. And I click on connect anyway. And the user is marked as compliant. So this is user 1. And now let's go back and look at the results. So we go to Radius live logs, and the user here was actually Eric. So a couple of things to note. Let's go and look at if the MFA happened. So you can go to reports and look at authentication logs here. So what you see is it's in India time, but that's the user. It's connecting to this application, and from where this has happened. Duo push was my method for MFA. Now let's get back. Sorry. Now let's get back to the results. So if you look at the result, here is Eric. He's connecting to VPN on FTD. That's the authentication policy, which we were looking at here. VPN FTD, right? And then he has gone ahead and he has hit authorization profile called posture check. Policy is posture check, and the authorization profile given was pre-posture VPN duo what we checked. Okay, and during this time it was saying it is pending. The posture status was pending, and this is when it is saying posture status is marked as compliant. Was it this machine? Yeah, so this is the machine. You see the VPN is already marked as connected. The roaming client, which was earlier active, has gone into disabled state, and there was a last posture scan status. So we can go to system scan and we can look at the statistics. It shows as compliant. The posture was validated against ISE dot my ISE device, which is right here, and these were the product which were evaluated, and yeah, so it's marked as compliant. So this is one of the user connected, already connected and up and running on VPN. We can evaluate if the mails are working fine. You should be able to go and access the email. It's working perfect right here. The internal web page or the proxy or the FTP, all the sites are working fine here. And this is where we come back and we look at the logs. So going back here and going to the logs. So recently the user what we tested out was Eric, and you can see code to access except he was allowed. So this is where the MFA code shows up that it was MFA happened. Doesn't change. We can give it a try with another user. In this case it will be Eric. Again the MFA comes. uh, Login. Okay, posture, it's connecting. We for posture validation, and it's valid, it's compliant, it's accessible, and then our user is able to access internet. Okay, and as expected everything is working fine. Basically we can, so this is anyway the new roaming new client. This is AnyConnect version 4.8 MR3 release, and you don't get to see the umbrella uh, status right here except it's active or not, but you can go back and check here. So I'm on VPN, and as you can see, because of trusted network detection, my roaming client is in disabled state. Compliance is the endpoint is marked as compliant. So where do you go and check this on FMC? You can actually go and check here under analysis and user activity. This is where you can check your VPN users, VPN authentication and VPN users. Another place to go and check this is overview dashboard. Let's get back to, okay, just give me a minute. So we go to overview and we click on dashboard right here. And then you can click on switch dashboard. You can go to access control user statistics, and that will show you the VPN users, what for last 6 hours. So this usually can take some time to load the events here, but this is where you will get your VPN related information. This dashboard already exists on FMC, so we just tested out this with two of the users, Alex and Eric. Both are shown here. One connected 8 minutes back and 2 minutes back. They're connected to this FTD. These have been some users from last couple of hours. All of them are using 4.803, which is MR3 release, and all of them are pretty much connecting from US location. So just to revise on the workflow, this is the workflow, and that's how you go and achieve this. So thank you for watching. Please do watch the next video where I'm going to cover the second workflow on this. And thank you and have a nice day.